Hello everyone, Charles Watts here. Welcome to another edition of Inside Arsenal. I hope you are all well and enjoying at the start of your week. As you can see, I'm not on my own today. I'm joined once again by James Benge of CBS. How are you doing, James? Thanks for joining me, mate.
I'm great. It's been a very fun opening week of the Premier League, hasn't it? It's given us everything, VAR, officials,
We've had
some
an
football.
apology. We've had a PGMOL apology after the first weekend of the season. It's remarkable. Well, it's not remarkable, actually. It is far from remarkable, in fact.
It's like I actually, I think obviously we all kind of our heads go back to that like total screw up in the Brentford game, and I think it's genuinely on a par with that. Where I don't actually understand how you can be I don't like giving officials and referees kickings all the time, but I don't understand how, as a professional official, you can see a goalkeeper wipe out an opponent in competing for the ball and not say, yeah, it's a penalty. I mean, referees are allowed to miss things. That's why we have VAR. How VAR misses that?
Yeah, honestly, it was a genuinely staggering decision. I know you say referees are allowed to miss things, but how did the referee miss that? I don't understand. I know VAR should have overturned it 100%, but the referee should have given that as a penalty on field. I mean, it was right in front of him. It was honestly
easy.
A genuinely staggering decision. It was the comical thing was when he ran over to the sideline and ended up booking Gary O'Neill when everyone thought he was going to the monitor. It was just Old Trafford, first weekend of the season. What a surprise. That is all I'm going to say. Anyway, enough from that. What you're watching right now, if you're watching this on YouTube or if you're listening to it on podcast format, this is going to be a regular thing now. Myself and James Benge are going to be teaming up for a show once a week throughout the season. So this is going to be a regular thing. We are totally winging it at this point. This is show number 1. And we did do kind of unofficial one a few weeks back to sort of test the waters on it. But this is, I'd say, our first official show. Although we don't have a name for it. We're winging it so much we don't even have a name for this show just yet. We've been kind of talking about it on WhatsApp and have failed miserably to come up with something. So we're just going to throw it out there. You came up with this yesterday, didn't you, James? You're like, why don't we just throw it out there and see if anyone comes up with anything that we like? So that's what we're going to do. What do you think? Have you got anything floating around in your head right now that you think we should be calling this?
Well, when we were first talking about this, obviously the name is kind of one of the first things you go to. And I thought, this is the summer of 2023. Why do any work yourself when you can get AI to do it for you? So I put in the names. We've got to get those keywords in this, and let's not be too arrogant here. We've got to get our names in it. That's what people really want. They want James Benge and they want Charles Watts together. Put that in an AI name generator. About the third one that cropped up was James Benge and Charles Watts arseholes, which I suspect we're going to see a lot in the comments, but it's probably not going to be something we could effectively monetize.
That would be quite a show name. That would. It might get a lot of clicks. It might get a lot. Would that get a lot of clicks? Actually, I'm not quite sure it would.
The bar is the bar's not even on the screen yet for all our viewers. So anything better than that is a win.
Yeah. So please do, if you're watching us on YouTube and you have a name that you think might work for this show, then just let us know. We'll have a look, and if anything floats our boat, who knows, that might well be what we're going for. But for now, we'll just stick with Inside Arsenal for this show. But it could be, we were thinking Inside Arsenal Extra Time or something like that with Charles Watts and James Benge, or James Benge and Charles Watts. It doesn't matter whose name's first. It should be mine,
doesn't it?
It doesn't really matter. But yeah, we'll throw that out to you and see what you come up with. And I promise you, you're not going to get as much waffle as you just had for this first 4 minutes in future shows. So shall we get cracking, Mr. Benge, with the important business of the day and talk about Arsenal? And we've got to start with devastating is the right word, I think, on so many levels for the news here. Devastating for the player, devastating for Arsenal, devastating for Mikel Arteta. The news that Jurrien Timber has suffered a serious knee injury. Now, we don't know the full extent yet, or Arsenal haven't confirmed the full extent yet, but they are fearing the worst. They're awaiting sort of second round of scan results and talks with consultants, but he suffered a serious knee injury in injury time in the first half against Nottingham Forest. And I think we're all beginning to accept that we might not see Arsenal's summer signing again this season, or if we do, it might not be till the very latter stages of this season. Just a hammer blow, James, to Arsenal and everyone involved, really, isn't it? Really, really disappointing.
Yeah, it's really devastating, all the more so because, I mean, personally, not only was I really warming to Timber, the player, who was brilliant in the Community Shield, and I really liked his first half against Nottingham Forest, but I really, like, early impressions, God, I really like this guy. I was wishing him the best. It seemed like someone that was ultra motivated to play for Arsenal, that was going to give his all. It was really interesting as well. Mikel Arteta wasn't just praising his technical qualities, but his courage, the way he'd learned. This is a massive challenge, stepping into the Zinchenko role, as we all call it. And within, that first 45 minutes, I think when we were talking about it, does Zinchenko get his place back? And look, like you say, I mean, first of all, we should say if there's secondary scans on this, that is bad news. An ACL would generally show up on any MRI if it was just an ACL injury. And obviously, kind of as I reported yesterday, this fear's not just over his ACL, but his meniscus as well. It's still early days, but kind of even last night I was hearing at minimum 7 months. That takes you through to April. I think it's only
if it's as bad as we can talk about April we want, can't we? But I think let's face it, he's not going to play again this season if it's as bad as well. We always get these sort of 9-month predictions with ACLs, and it always ends up being a little bit longer than that. And you can't, if you're not going to throw a player in at the business end of the season if he's just come back from a long-term ACL injury. Are you just going to protect it and go through to the summer, aren't you?
I'd be stunned if we see him this season. And I think, from those scans, I think that is starting to be the view within Arsenal. I think there's a real, I mean, look, they would say, and we should say, they haven't put a timescale on it. They probably won't put a timescale on it even when it happens, because, these are long recovery periods that can change quite dramatically. But it's really, the early indications are we're not seeing him this season. You shouldn't. If he's coming back in April, just leave him, give him the summer. And I'm confident that when he's back, ACL injuries aren't what they were. I mean, even Robert Pires was never entirely the same after his 20 years ago, but now he should come back and be as good, better. I mean, Folarin Wirtz, I don't want to go too far on tangent, but you have someone like Folarin Wirtz came back straight away after sort of 9 months out and was as good as before. It's not going to be a career ender, I don't think. But I think it is a season ender.
Yeah, it's such a shame. And, for the player's point of view, it's difficult if you're an experienced sort of Premier League player who've been at a club for a long time to sort of face up to months and months in the treatment room, basically on your own and away from your teammates. But from a new player, he's just coming over, he's still young. He'd really pushed for this move. He wanted it. It was his dream move to Arsenal. And then to suddenly be away from your teammates in a new city, in a new league, a new culture, it's just, he must be absolutely gutted for it. And for Mikel as well, he was going to provide so much versatility, quality, technique, the option to change systems. It's such a disappointment for everyone involved. It's really tough to dress it up any other way. It's a real hammer blow to Arsenal, and it sort of represents a lot of different things. I've got some comments and questions about it to talk about. I mean, there's one here from Phil, says, with Timber's injury, can you see us going for another fullback? As reports suggest we might. I can't see Arteta panic buying. Looking at the squad on Saturday, it's defence heavy. If we're still looking for more incoming, surely it has to be covered for Saka. And I'd be surprised if Arsenal, I don't know if you agree with me, I'd be surprised if Arsenal go in and sign a replacement for Timber. I'm sure they'll look at what's out there, and if there's a really sort of interesting option that is there and doable, they might well do it, potentially a loan or something like that. But I'd be very surprised if Arsenal go out and spend a lot of money to replace a player that they've just spent a lot of money on, who will be back, touch wood, in sort of 9 or 10 months' time. And Arsenal pretty well stocked in defence. I think you look at the left-back options, Zinchenko's coming back to fitness now. Obviously, he's difficult to rely on so far in terms of injuries, but you've got Kivior, who Mikel seems to like, out there, Tomiyasu as well. On the right side, obviously, you've got Ben White, who was brilliant last season. You've got Tomiyasu who can play there as well. You've got Declan Rice you can throw into the mix now as potentially adding another centre-back if you need to shuffle things around at the back. I'd be surprised if they go out and do anything unless a really good opportunity just kind of just falls into the lap. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, the other person you haven't mentioned there is Kieran Tierney.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm still, my view on this is still that if a good offer came in for Tierney and it was the right move for Tierney, Arsenal would not be in the business of standing in his way. But equally, I think what's more likely is that it just eases the pressure to just move him on, and that maybe now a loan deal that doesn't quite look right for Arsenal is the sort of thing they might reassess. Whereas before they would have said, well, if he's not going to play at all, I mean, Tierney might be needed now. And obviously, Mikel used him in pre-season. We do forget that. I know he wasn't in the squad on Saturday, and I don't think he would be a regular. But like you say, if I don't see Arsenal rushing to do something. If there's a deal out there that's worth doing, I'm sure they will explore it. But I agree, it's all sales now, and then if the sales come off right, I think the view is it's more likely to be an attacker than a defender.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Tierney thing, I still don't really look at Timber's injury and think that's going to have too much of an impact on Tierney's future. I still think if a decent offer comes in between now and the end of the window, that they'll let Tierney go. I thought it was really harsh he wasn't in the matchday squad at the weekend. Like you said, I thought he did really well in pre-season whenever he came on, even though Mikel basically used every single other option he could ahead of him during all the pre-season games. Whenever Tierney came on, he made an impact. He looked hungry. And then to not be in the matchday squad, I thought was pretty harsh at the weekend, although it showed a lot about the strength in depth that Arsenal now do have. And, I still think Tierney goes between now and the end of the season, end of the window, if a good opportunity arrives. We've seen, I saw Luke Edwards at the Telegraph yesterday, obviously was saying that Newcastle was still exploring a potential deal for Tierney. If that is a loan deal with an obligation to buy at the end of next season, I think that might be appealing one to Arsenal. And Chris here says, what about Tierney? What is it about Tierney Arteta doesn't like? And I think it's totally wrong the way he's been treated. And I don't think it's anything specifically in terms of certainly not him or his character or his personality that he doesn't like, because he does. But I just think, and I've mentioned this loads of times before, that Arsenal just evolved in a way, the team's evolved in a way that just doesn't quite suit Kieran, as good as he is. And that's why he will potentially be going. And like you said, it's all about sales for Arsenal, isn't it? It's between now and the end of the window. And he's a player who Arsenal, if they can get market value for him, they can get a lot of money for him, and they need to do that.
Yeah, I don't think Tierney's been harshly treated at all. He got a lot of games last season where he was sort of encouraged to play as the sort of left back that Mikel Arteta wants. And as good as Kieran Tierney is in that overlapping role, I'm not rebalancing my entire team to get a slightly better version of Kieran Tierney, especially if that means, I'm not getting the best Martinelli, I'm not getting the best Xhaka last season, Havertz this. So, yeah, I mean, there's a little part of me that looking at Newcastle on the opening weekend, I'm like, I am not giving you any players you want. But I still think Arsenal are good enough that they can afford to say, Newcastle, give us a good deal on Tierney and he's yours.
Yeah, I think now if you want to get decent money, unless you sell into Saudi, sometimes you just got to accept you've got to sell to a Premier League club now, because that's where the money is. And we're seeing it more and more between clubs in the Premier League. And
actually, Tierney had some, I think we're going to come to talk about Saudi Arabia, I'm sure. There was some sitters out there for Tierney, to which my immediate response was, I don't know if there's enough suntan lotion in the entire country. I don't think that's one that will happen.
We will talk about Gabriel at some point, especially with our ready-made Saudi Arabia correspondent sitting right here that we will talk about. Before we got to talk about goalkeepers, I think David Raya and Aaron Ramsdale. Now, I had my say on this in a video I did yesterday, that I think it's a risky deal. I think it's a good deal for Arsenal in terms of squad depth, in terms of competition, but I just think two absolute number one goalkeepers rarely works, and it will just end with one person leaving. And I would say that person who's going to probably end up leaving at some point might well be Aaron Ramsdale if this deal happens. Not sure you agree with me.
Do you like it more as a loan than as a...
I do, but the only reason it's going to be a loan, isn't it, is just so they can buy him next season. It's not just a loan with then we'll decide what to do at the end of this season. It'll be just FFP type stuff, when it's sort of balance the books and spread the cost more for next season rather than this season. I imagine it's not going to be anything else to do with that. But yeah, I just think if you're David Raya, you've got a year left on your deal at Brentford. Yes, you want to go now. You've wanted to go for the last 12 months, but if you can't get a good deal this summer, you're just going to wait it out, go next year, have your pick of so many clubs. So to decide to go to Arsenal now, you've got to have some sort of assurances that long term you're going to be given a real opportunity to oust Aaron Ramsdale as number one. And I think if you're from Aaron Ramsdale point of view, if you're there now, yes, you've got the shirt, which is the best position to have because it's up to you to lose it. I still think you've got to be feeling a little bit worried about your long-term prospects of staying number one if you're signing David Raya from Brentford and you've got the goalkeeping coach is Inaki Kana, who very much likes David Raya and worked with him before at Brentford. I think if you're Ramsdale, as strong as the personality is, as strong as your character is, as much as he says, bring it on, I think secretly when you're sitting at home, you've got to be thinking, oh, this could be a little bit of a problem.
I completely agree. And look, you know, we're going to hear when this deal does get announced, which, I mean, I've heard it's today since about Thursday. So hopefully it's today. When it gets announced, we will hear whether on the record or, you know, from Mikel Arteta or from Edu or whoever, that the competition is great and that there is no starting number one. And I'm certain that, you know, I completely agree with you, Charles, but I am certain that no one has actually said the words to David Raya, you are our number one. You will be our starting goalkeeper. I am certain, though, they have reminded David Raya that he is the goalkeeper they have wanted for over 3 years. And, you know, like you say, Inaki Kana, Edu, Mikel Arteta, they all really, really like this goalkeeper. And I think he's fantastic, by the way. I actually think he saw a fair bit of Brentford last season. I think he's a better goalkeeper, better shot stopper, much better in the air. And I think it's 50-50 with his feet. But I think Raya is going to win the number one jersey quite quickly. Fun thing, though, I see the passes completed there, and you're going to see loads of stats about how he's the best long ball playing goalkeeper in the Premier League. I think Aaron Ramsdale would be the best long ball playing goalkeeper in the Premier League if he was aiming for Ivan Toney. So one thing to bear in mind when you see those numbers, it's a lot easier completing your long passes if they're towards Ivan Toney. Yeah, I struggle to see it working long term with Raya and Ramsdale. And like you, if someone said to me, one of these goalkeepers is going to go in a couple of years from Arsenal, I would think it would be Ramsdale. However, even if he's a number two, I think Arsenal will kind of would get their money back and some on a big fee they paid to Sheffield United, and they would have got 2 years of good, you know, top 8 goalkeeping in the Premier League. There's nothing to be sniffed at. I do almost look at this as like Arsenal have gone for a minor but noticeable upgrade in goal, and you know those marginal gains could make all the difference come April, May. So unlike you, I kind of like this deal, but it would be a shame. I would be disappointed if it ultimately led to Ramsdale leaving, and I fear it might.
It's going to be a killer in the mix zone. Although saying that, I don't know if what David Raya is like when it comes to stopping in the mix zone.
He has sort of publicly said on several occasions that he wants to leave Brentford. So there's a dreadful part of us in our profession where I know that like fans hate it when players are so vocal. I'm like, that's great. Get this guy at Arsenal, please.
Well, yeah, but true. But Aaron, I mean, if it's just one player, you can almost guarantee if you need someone, you can ask for Aaron, and it will tend to do it. I mean, the stats are pretty sort of seem to be weighted in the favour of Raya in some areas and Ramsdale. You know, they're two very evenly balanced goalkeepers, I would say. One thing on it is, I think if you're really looking at the Arsenal team at the moment, and you sort of look at some of the performances last season, and you look, where can you improve to become take that next step? As harsh as it sounds on Ramsdale, I think goalkeeper is probably a position that you would circle and say potentially there. As good as he is, as big of impacts he's made, as important saves he's made, sometimes you do watch him and think, oh, could you have done better there? And so it might, you know, it potentially shows a ruthless side of Mikel Arteta and Edu in this squad building that they're putting together and how they can close the gap on Man City. And, you know, it's a really intriguing transfer. We wait for it to be announced. As you said, it's like typical Arsenal, going to be today, and it just drags on. From what I heard, he's done everything that needs to be done at Arsenal. He's been given the number 22 shirt. And we just wait the official confirmation between the clubs. But it's a really interesting one, I think, and I'm intrigued to see how.
I don't like that shirt number though. That's a right back shirt number.
22. Who had 20? Murray had it last time, didn't he? Is that right? Was it Murray?
Oh yeah, it might be. I don't think it's not one of those with a sort of illustrious history, is it? It's
No.
not, it's not 19 even.
It's not one. I've got a comment here from John. He says, Ramsdale is a good goalkeeper, but he has weak aspects to his game. He is beaten too often at his near post. When diving low, his stance is often too wide and he has to take a step before making the dive. While his distribution is good, Raya's is exceptional. Raya has not joined to be number 2. Either Ramsdale is outstanding in the next couple of months or Raya is Arsenal goalkeeper by Christmas. I have to admit, I think it's a really good comment. And I do tend to agree with John. I thought Matt Turner's comments in the mix zone at the weekend were quite interesting. So whenever I thought I'd maybe creak the door open a little bit, Ramsdale came back into the side and played really well for the next couple of games, and that was it and stuff. So it'll be interesting to see if Ramsdale really steps up his performances. Will this competition drive him on to improve, or will he become a little bit nervy, knowing that if he makes a single mistake, then the groundswell of opinion that Raya should be coming into the team could well put him off his game. I mean, it all adds to the intrigue about what is a really, really interesting deal this summer. Right, Mr. Saudi correspondent. Let's talk about Gabriel. Now, this is an interesting one. Suddenly been linked with a couple of weeks left in the window. What date are we on at the moment? August 15th. Couple of weeks left of the window. Suddenly being linked with potential interest from Saudi. They're not massive links. We haven't heard from a certain team is interested or a bidder's come in or anything like that. It's just that there is interest from Saudi in Gabriel, who's such an important player for Arsenal, been so influential, been pretty much one of the first names on the team sheet. So, Mr. Saudi correspondent, can you tell us any more about these reports?
I can tell you the likely team. I have to say likely because I would assume this is a deal done by PIF, the investment fund that owns the 4 biggest clubs. But I believe that it would be to go to Al Ittihad if the Saudi, and obviously from that you can tell there is interest. There is interest from Saudi Arabia. I think John Cross was first on that, and he's had a pretty excellent summer so far. What I don't know, and I have been asking around, is kind of what Gabriel's response to that would be. I think it's, even though he signed a new contract, I think it's fair to assume that he would be taking home a sizable wedge of extra money if he were to go to the Pro League. And remember, no income tax out there or anything like that. So, the paying the exact same money out would effectively double Gabriel's, or not far off double Gabriel's salary. I remember talking to people at Arsenal last year when there were a lot of links with Juventus, and there was real assertiveness there that they viewed Gabriel as a key player. I don't see anything about his performances last season. I thought he was an underrated star. So I don't see anything about them that would make me think Arsenal would willingly lose Gabriel for anything less than silly money. I don't get, as I say, I don't know what his response to this is, but he signed a new contract quite recently. More than he gets credit for, he's a bit of a leader in the dressing room, and he has taken the armband recently. I can't quite remember when that was, but I've certainly seen him don the armband. He's really valued. So I'm not I wouldn't be terrified about this, because for the deal to happen, the sort of money Arsenal would have to get could very easily go into a very good defender to replace Gabriel. But I would not, I'm not in the business, especially in light of the timber industry, especially in light of the timber injury. I am not in the business of contemplating offers for Gabriel. I think he's brilliant. I think he's really good. And I wouldn't also read too much into him not playing on Saturday. The indications are that he was fit, but look, especially early in the season, Arteta, we all knew was going to want to take a look at different things. And I got the sense that was a game that they just wanted to see Partey, Rice, Havertz all in one team.
Yeah, I didn't read too much into that either. I have to admit, I think we're going to have to get used to Mikel doing unexpected things in the starting 11. I think a lot of the signings this summer have given him an opportunity to do that, and I think there's going to be a fair few starting 11s that we're like, what's he done there? He's got the versatility now to do that, and especially at home against a team who's going to sit in. I think he probably just wanted, with Partey and Timber as fullbacks, he could add more numbers into the midfield, creative sort of stuff. So, I didn't read too much into that. I think, personally, I just cannot believe Arsenal would entertain this. Maybe at the start of the summer, when you get a lot of time to
Mm.
react and stuff. But 2 weeks before the window shuts, once the season's already started, when the Champions League is looming large, to suddenly sell such an important player, like you said, who's not just an important player on the pitch, but he's a massive leader behind, he's really taken on responsibility at the club in the last year or so, in the last 12 months. Mikel Arteta wanted that from him and he's done that. I just think it'd be a massive risk, and it would have to be, like you said, silly money to even entertain it. But even then, you're left with pretty much next to no time to bring in a replacement, and you'd be up against it, because any replacement you would target, the club would know that you've got a load of money sitting there from selling Gabriel. You'd have 2 weeks left in the window, so they would be able to use that to get a potentially massive fee, and then you've got to let players settle in. Saliba and Gabriel are so in tune, and changing that now, it'd just be a massive risk. And I can't believe Arsenal would even entertain something like that. I think it would be,
and I don't think Gabriel would. I mean, we all, the money obviously is a big factor, and we all talk about Saudi so much and the players that have gone there, but an awful lot of players have said, "I'm all right, thanks." And I don't know Gabriel personally, but I get the sense he would not be in a rush to get that money.
No, I agree. I mean, obviously, it's tough to say that when someone's offering God knows what wages in front of you, but he's not exactly poor. He's not, is he? He's getting good money. Like I said, he's got that new long-term contract fairly recently, so he's got a lot of good money behind him. He's happy in London. He's got a lot of teammates that he gets on with Arsenal. He's a leader. I can't see it. I really can't see it. I think he stays and he continues to form this partnership. I think he comes back into the side against Palace. I'd be very surprised if Arsenal go to Selhurst Park in a game where you kind of know what you're going to get from Palace. I'd be very surprised if they go there and you don't have Saliba and Gabriel together under the lights on a Monday night. It would really shock me.
Agreed, 100%.
Yeah, Ben White back to right back.
I think so. I thought Partey was good. I'm sure we'll see it again in the season, but I mean, frankly, I loved Ben White. I thought he was brilliant, doing overlapping from centre back like he's a Sheffield United defender under Chris Wilder. I really like Ben White. So for me, I think maybe it's a straight swap of probably just Partey for Partey out, Gabriel in. Maybe try and find a way for Trossard to get in that team as well. But I liked a lot of what Arsenal did in the first half against Forest. I just think the second half wasn't like a system thing or anything like that, was it? It was just them thinking they'd won the game. Yeah,
absolutely. It's interesting how sort of games play such an important role in how the matches are perceived, isn't it? Because, I mean, you look at how Arsenal played against Forest, and for large parts they were excellent. There was really good parts in the first half, especially in the last sort of 25 minutes of that first half. And yet you came away from that game and there was a lot of criticism levelled at them. But then you look at United yesterday, who were frankly completely outplayed by Wolves on every level. I mean, the stats, the shots faced were unbelievable in terms of Wolves. I think it was the most since Mourinho's Chelsea in like 2005 or something, 24 shots on goal.
I think the only team that's been more battered this weekend was Luton against Brighton.
Yeah, incredible. And yet, all the United fans leaving that game would just be pretty happy. They get a late goal, win 1-0, and even though they've been played off the park, there's probably nowhere near as much criticism about their performance as there was from some Arsenal fans for the performance against Forest. It's really interesting how the timings of goals play such an important role in terms of how things are viewed. Just before we sort of call time on this, there's a couple of questions. Well, I think I've sort of answered some of them already. We've answered some of them because I brought them in a little bit earlier because the conversation has turned to that. But there's one here from Bernard Sampson. Obviously, Balogun's still an Arsenal player at the moment. We know Monaco are looking to potentially bring him in. They've had at least one bid turned down by Arsenal. It's expected they're going to come back in with another pretty soon. The clubs were in talks during the Emirates Cup, sort of 48 hours that Monaco were in town about that. Been linked with Spurs as well. I think the links came from somewhere in Italy. It wasn't really, they didn't really have one that I looked at and thought this is substance. It's not something I've heard of before. I mean, Spurs have got £100 million burning a hole in their pocket. They need to bring in a replacement for Harry Kane, who is, thank the Lord, left. Spurs, Balogun. I mean, not for me. What would you? Where would you rather see Balogun go?
I'd certainly rather not take the risk of him coming back to haunt Arsenal. Although if they want to offer more money than anyone else, I'm not totally against it. If I'm Edu, if they're the best bid,
I wouldn't feel like an Ashley Cole situation. I don't really have a sense of. I don't feel like Balogun belongs to me.
I mean, he'd be pretty devastated, wouldn't he? Because he's been so publicly flirting with Inter Milan, hasn't he? In his Instagram stories, I can't. He's probably wishing happy birthday to Dejan Stankovic as we speak. Like you, I kind of the Monaco talks are still like it would be. I'd almost respect Balogun if he went for Spurs. I mean, I respect him anyway, but it's incredibly brave. You and I both know you've got the tube back from Spurs game, whether it's after a North London derby. Obviously, I'm there a bit more frequently, and you don't have to kind of travel long or far until you hear chants about Sol Campbell. And obviously, that's the last player to make that move directly. I don't think anyone at Tottenham or Arsenal particularly liked Emmanuel Adebayor because of the fact that you just can't cross that gap. And it would be incredibly brave of Balogun if he were to make that move. A bit of a hiding to nothing. I like you. I wouldn't kind of feel ultra betrayed, but the spotlight that would shine on Balogun would be so hard for any young footballer to thrive under. I can't see it happening.
West Ham still feels like the move. If he's going to Premier League, West Ham feels like the move to me for Balogun, and I still wouldn't be surprised if some interest might materialise there, or some firm interest might materialise there before the end of the window. It just feels like one that could work. But Monaco would be that'd be an interesting one for him. It's a nice place to play football. He's proven in the French league already that he can make a big impact. And if that is a deal done, I'm sure he'd be very, very interested by that one, even if he was looking potentially at the San Siro with a little bit more of an admiring glance than he is at the Principality.
Yes, 100%. I also think at his age and given kind of what he's achieved, it's early to be certain you can be a starting striker for a team that would expect to be in the top half of the Premier League. That's a big step up from kind of a Farmers League. I'll say it.
Oh, harsh, right? I direct that abuse at James Benge. That was not my comments. Any fans of League? Okay, I think that just about brings us to the end of this first show with no name. Before I go, though, I don't know if you're aware of this, James, but there is a big event coming up at North London fairly soon.
I'm very excited about this.
On the 31st of August. I don't know if you've heard, but there is a book coming out that's written by a fantastic writer that you might know. And just for anyone who's in and around North London on the 31st of August, please do pop down to the Tollington to say hello, to buy a book, to have it signed, to join in with the festivities on the night. And cheap plug, done and dusted for today's show. I didn't do it at the beginning, which I have done recently. I thought I'd spare people that, but so I thought I'd save it to the end for those final few people who are still watching or listening at this late stage of the
I really like the cover, I have to say. It's the Go Faster stripes, or however you call it. It looks great. I mean, it's obviously a shame you couldn't get Mikel to pose for one of those photo shoots like the one he did in GQ, but what can you do?
Yeah, well, enjoy the cover, because once you get inside it, it all goes downhill from there. But, so yes, thank you, James, for this, and thank you everyone for watching. If you've been watching us on YouTube or listening on your podcast platform, and like I said, this will be now a regular thing. So myself and James will be back next week, maybe with a name for this show by then. So thanks for watching, everyone. Thank you very much, James. Have a good day, mate. Enjoy your little trip where you're heading off to now for the next few days, and yeah. Have a great time. Speak to you soon, everyone.
Cheers.